Welcome to Planet America's Situation Room. I'm John Barron, and with Chaz away this week, we're joined by former ABC North America Bureau Chief Jade Macmillan. Jade, welcome.
Thank you. It is so great to be here, John, but I have to warn you, we have a situation.
Former FBI Director James Comey is remaining defiant and denied any wrongdoing.
I'm innocent.
President Trump is celebrating the indictment as Democrats accuse him of weaponizing the Justice Department.
There'll be others. I mean, they're corrupt.
Some are calling the Comey indictment a constitutional crisis. Others are saying it's retribution and revenge. We'll look at what the former FBI chief is accused of and what the experts and pundits are saying.
And we'll bring you an update on the return of Jimmy Kimmel and the push to release the Epstein files. It looks like that House vote is going to happen, John. But first...
Heading the news from Planet America this week.
Major breaking news tonight. Former FBI Director James Comey, or as he likes to describe himself, Mr. Higher Honor, has been indicted by a federal grand jury in Virginia.
Comey's indictment on charges of making false statements within the jurisdiction of the legislative branch of the United States government and obstruction of a congressional proceeding carry a potential penalty of up to 5 years in prison for each charge. This case relates to testimony that Comey gave in 2020, 3 years after being sacked as FBI director by President Trump, when senators were looking at his handling of the investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 election.
You solemnly swear that testimony you're about to give this committee is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Back in the dark days of COVID, Comey's evidence was delivered via video link on September 30th, just weeks before Trump lost the election to Joe Biden. This indictment claims that Comey told the Senate Judiciary Committee that he had not authorised someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports. And the indictment says that statement was false, although despite the quote marks, those aren't Comey's actual words. Comey was asked by Republican Senator Ted Cruz about evidence he'd given back in May of 2017, while Comey was still FBI director, which appeared to be contradicted by evidence given by his deputy, Andrew McCabe, who, according to a report by the Justice Department Inspector General in 2018, told investigators that Mr. Comey authorised him to leak information to the press.
So your testimony is you've never authorised anyone to leak? And Mr. McCabe, if he says contrary, is not telling the truth. Is that correct?
Again, I'm not going to characterize Andy's testimony, but mine is the same today.
The false statement and obstruction charges relate to that 2020 hearing because the statute of limitations has already passed on Comey's original 2017 evidence. And it was due to expire again on the 2020 hearings just this week. But this could get very muddy indeed, Jade, because even if Comey was lying in 2017 about ordering a leak, and that has certainly not been established, he did not repeat those words in 2020, and Ted Cruz did not exactly quote what Comey had been asked by Chuck Grassley in 2017. Confusing, I know. But the thing to know is that they also have to prove that Comey meant to lie if he lied. So fair to say it's already looking a little bit shaky.
Yeah, and if the case is looking shaky, John, what led up to it is looking decidedly shady. You'll recall just over a week ago that Donald Trump posted on social media what was basically a memo to his Attorney General, Pam Bondi, asking,
What about Comey? Adam Shifty Shift, Letitia.
He then took aim at recently resigned US Attorney Eric Siebert, who'd been looking into possible charges against Comey and Letitia James, the New York Attorney General, claiming Siebert, who he appointed,
Lied to the media and said he quit and that we had no case. No, I fired him, and there is a great case.
Now, that is unusual to say the least, John. Typically, the Attorney General and prosecutors within the Justice Department are kept well away from the influence of the President to avoid perceptions that the legal system is being politicised. Pressuring the Justice Department to fire a supposedly independent US attorney was one of the reasons President Richard Nixon had a couple of Attorneys General quit in protest before he was eventually forced to resign over Watergate.
Because of the President's action, the Attorney General has resigned. Elliot Richardson has quit, saying he cannot carry out Mr. Nixon's instructions. Richardson's deputy, William Ruckelshaus, has been fired. Ruckelshaus refused in a moment of constitutional drama to obey a presidential order to fire the special Watergate prosecutor.
No such qualms from Pam Bondi, John, but 53 years later, Democratic House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries is calling this a constitutional crisis too.
Like, it's all crazy to me. Crazy to me. These charges are going to be dismissed. James Comey will win in court. But what it reflects is a broader attack on the rule of law that should frighten every single American.
And even Donald Trump isn't trying to make out that Eric Siebert's replacement is independent.
It is my honor to appoint Lindsay Halligan, who has been serving as special assistant to the president at the White House as United States Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia. Lindsay is a tough, smart, and loyal attorney who has worked with me for a long time.
Now, Lindsay Halligan showed her loyalty by taking the evidence that Siebert had said was insufficient to charge Comey and using it to secure the indictments from the grand jury.
Well, James Comey, who these days mostly writes crime novels when he's not walking on the beach, took to Instagram to declare his innocence, and he vowed to fight these charges in court.
My family and I have known for years that there are costs to standing up to Donald Trump, but we couldn't imagine ourselves living any other way. We will not live on our knees, and you shouldn't either. But I'm not afraid, and I hope you're not either. I hope instead you are engaged, you are paying attention, and you will vote like your beloved country depends upon it, which it does. My heart is broken for the Department of Justice, but I have great confidence in the federal judicial system, and I'm innocent. So let's have a trial and keep the faith.
According to MSNBC's Ken Delanian, who's been ahead of the pack on this story for weeks now, Department of Justice sources think that this indictment is, quote, among the worst abuses in DOJ history, and that it is, quote, shocking and hard to overstate what a big moment this is. And it seems like that grand jury, which, remember, only hears the prosecution case, no kind of defence at all, only narrowly voted to indict Comey. Needing 12 votes, 14 of the 23 grand jurors voted to indict. So that's a potentially bad sign for the prosecution once a defence team goes to work. Federal courts typically need a unanimous verdict to convict as well. And in more bad news for prosecutors, a judge appointed by President Joe Biden has been randomly assigned to this Comey case. This is US District Court Judge Michael Nachmanov. Meanwhile, President Trump is both denying he pressured his Attorney General, Pam Bondi, to prosecute Comey, despite ample evidence, including those social media posts and public comments, but he's also hoping there are more indictments on the way against his enemies.
No, there'll be others. Look, that's my opinion. They weaponized the Justice Department like nobody in history. What they've done is terrible. And so I hope there are others, because you can't let this happen to a country.
Now, John, of course, not everyone is criticising these indictments.
This isn't revenge. It's accountability.
James Comey and a bunch of others wanted to destroy Donald Trump. That, to me, needs to be looked at.
No one is above the law, and you will be held accountable. And, you know, a very liberal grand jury in one of the most liberal jurisdictions in the country just indicted James Comey. Now, we know, of course, we have to go to trial. We'll have a great trial team, and everyone, of course, is innocent until proven guilty. However, we are going to trial in this case, and this is just the beginning.
And it does look like this is just the beginning, with reports senior leaders in Pam Bondi's Justice Department are urging swift charges against Trump's former national security advisor, John Bolton. That's despite hesitation from some prosecutors who believe more investigation is necessary. Bolton has become a fierce Trump critic since leaving his administration. His home and office were raided last month by the FBI, looking to see if he'd retained classified documents. And while President Trump denies he has a list of people he wants indicted, his Deputy Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller, certainly seems to have one.
Comey, Clapper, Brennan, Obama, Monaco, all conspired together, all worked together to try to sabotage, undermine, unravel the democratic institutions and structures of this country. I cannot find words harsh enough to condemn the conduct of these conspirators, these insurrectionists.
Did Stephen Miller get into our studio?
It certainly looks like it.
Same panelling. For more on all of this, I spoke to former Department of Justice Federal Prosecutor and legal analyst Neama Rahmani. Mr. Rahmani, welcome to Planet America. Can you put this into some context for us? Just how unusual is this indictment of James Comey?
This is highly unusual. We're really talking about an unprecedented indictment of a former federal prosecutor and the former director of the FBI.
And in your view, was there anything legally problematic in the fact that the President of the United States made it very clear that he would like to see Comey and others indicted?
It's highly problematic, and it gives rise to a potential selective prosecution or political prosecution defense. This is going to be a tough case to prove in any event. Let's be clear, we're not talking about the actual leak that happened in 2017. That's barred by the statute of limitations. We're talking about Comey lying to Congress about whether he authorized that leak or not. So it's a tough case, and the President of the United States tweeting and posting on Truth Social about it just helps the defense argue that this is all political.
How hard do you think a case this will be to prove? Will they ultimately need some kind of a paper trail to show that Comey authorised a leak to the media?
This is going to be a hard case to prove. In 2020, Comey told Senator Ted Cruz that he stood by his earlier testimony that he didn't authorize the leak. If McCabe were to testify that he told Comey about it after the fact, well, that's not authorizing it. That is an absolute defense in this case. And not only that, even if the statement were untrue, under U.S. law, the falsity has to be intentional. That means Comey intended to mislead Congress, and it has to be material or important. And I'm not sure that the government can prove all those and prove that this wasn't selective prosecution.
As for the possibility of a claim from the defence of a selective or vindictive prosecution, judges typically throw those applications out, don't they?
Selective or vindictive prosecution defenses are difficult. There has to be a prosecution for a constitutionally prohibited reason. Here, Comey's defense team is going to argue that he's being prosecuted because he is a political opponent of President Trump, and he's being targeted for his speech and his political association. That would be a First Amendment argument. He's also going to argue that he's not being provided due process under the Fifth Amendment because he's being treated differently than similarly situated defendants.
And we're seeing supporters of the president this week saying, look, what's happening to Jim Comey is no worse than what happened to Donald Trump during the Biden presidency. What do you say to that?
I understand the president and Republicans don't like James Comey. Democrats don't like him either. Many of them blame Comey for the Hillary Clinton emails that cost her that election. So he's wildly unpopular on both sides. But even though I have criticism of Comey as the director of the FBI, law enforcement, they're supposed to investigate cases. He really interjected himself into a lot of political situations that really ended up politicizing the FBI. And now, I don't know if we can really come back from it, but there's politics and there's the law. And even if the president was treated unfairly in his previous criminal cases, Comey didn't prosecute any of those cases. This is really doubling down, and it's a dangerous precedent if Trump is going to go after Comey, Bolton, Adam Schiff, and other folks that really weren't part of any of his criminal prosecutions.
And can I ask, what are your former colleagues at the Justice Department saying about this Comey case?
I'm in touch with a lot of my former colleagues at the Department of Justice, and morale is down significantly. Let's not forget the interim U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia, where the FBI is, Eric Siebert. He didn't think there was enough probable cause to bring this case. He resigned rather than bring these charges. So Trump appointed Lindsay Halligan. Now, she is a loyalist, a Trump lawyer, but she's never prosecuted a single case in her entire life. She's an insurance lawyer. So she went into that grand jury last week and She was unable to even get an indictment on one of the false statement counts. So this case is very shaky, and I'm not sure that we can get across the finish line. There's also one very important note here. The judge in this case is a Biden appointee. He's a former federal public defender. I think he's going to take a close eye at these charges, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up dismissing one or both of them. And also importantly, jurors in Northern Virginia tend to skew Democrat. That's going to be a predominantly Democratic jury pool. So it's going to be very difficult for the Department of Justice in this case to get 12 out of 12 jurors unanimously to convict Comey, no matter how unpopular he is.
I suppose what happens next kind of writes itself, doesn't it? If the case is thrown out or ultimately a jury votes to acquit Jim Comey, President Trump is going to say it was a Biden judge and a biased Liberal jury, and the net result is just to further erode public confidence in the justice system.
There's no way to say it except this is a highly politicized case, and politics will infect every moment of it. When you have the President of the United States, the Attorney General, the Director of the FBI talking about a criminal case, jurors, the pool's going to be tainted already. And you have Comey himself going on social media and posting an Instagram story saying that he's going to push this case all the way to trial. I believe him. And it's going to be very hard to get a consensus on this case, either folks who are watching right now or who happen to be sitting on that jury.
And finally, in your assessment, does the President or those involved in pushing ahead with this prosecution have any legal exposure themselves?
The President has full immunity for any official acts, and even prosecutors have immunity for their charging decisions, whether to charge or not to charge. So they won't face any legal consequences. Of course, there may be political blowback if this case is indeed a loser.
Neama Rahmani, thanks for being with us on Planet America.
Of course, thanks for having me as always.
Now to the latest on the Epstein affair. It's the scandal that continues to dog the Trump administration, despite their best efforts to shut anything about it down.
We have this for you tonight. A controversial statue of President Trump and Jeffrey Epstein has been removed from the National Mall. Take a look at this. This was in D.C. It showed the two holding hands. A group called the Secret Handshake installed the statue amid growing calls to release the Epstein investigation files.
Pretty expensive gag. Democrats on the US House Oversight Committee, meanwhile, have released more potentially embarrassing documents from the estate of the late sex trafficker this week. And while Trump's name does not appear, that of some of his friends certainly does.
Elon Musk is named in files relating to Jeffrey Epstein released by Democrats in the United States.
And not just Musk, also former Trump advisor Steve Bannon, billionaire Trump donor Peter Thiel, and Britain's Prince Andrew. In what appears to be a copy of Epstein's itinerary, Musk had a tentative trip to Epstein's Island in 2014. Another schedule shows Epstein planned lunch with Thiel in 2017 and Bannon in early 2019, just months before Epstein was arrested and charged with sex trafficking children. Those dates are potentially significant because it was during Trump's presidency and more than a decade after he claims to have cut off all ties with Epstein. Again, begging the $64,000 question, Jade, is Trump protecting powerful friends or possibly himself?
We might be able to find out pretty soon. You'll remember, John, a few weeks ago, you and Chaz were talking about what's known as a discharge petition. This had been going around members of the House of Representatives. If they gather enough signatures, they can force a floor vote on the release of all of the Epstein files. Only 4 Republicans have so far defied the Trump White House and Republican Speaker Mike Johnson by signing on to the petition, which is being co-sponsored by Kentucky's Thomas Massie. But he is sounding very confident that they will soon have the votes they need.
So when we go back to Congress, when we reconvene, I'll have 218 signatures and we will get a vote on this.
And his confidence seems well-founded after the Democrats picked up a vacant House seat in Arizona last week. Adelita Grijalva was elected to replace her father, Raul, who died in office 6 months ago. And she says she will be that 218th vote.
That the Republican Party and Trump specifically during the election said, day one, I'm going to release the Epstein files so we know. And we don't know why that hasn't happened, other than the fact that there must be something in there that Trump doesn't want us to see.
So, John, watch this space. But now onto a topic that seems to come up pretty frequently in the news cycle: loneliness. Anyone would think that the world is in the midst of a global loneliness emergency, with or without COVID. In fact, back in 2023, President Biden's Surgeon General declared the US was in the grip of an epidemic of loneliness. But is it really? Let's ask Melina Wicks.
Americans are lonely. Or so I've heard.
It's being called the loneliness epidemic.
Loneliness epidemic.
The loneliness epidemic.
The loneliness epidemic. It's an epidemic of people using the phrase loneliness epidemic. According to Gallup, daily loneliness afflicts 1 in 5 American adults. That's around 52 million people. And it's a serious issue. In a 2023 report, the then US Surgeon General warned loneliness poses health risks as deadly as smoking. Though it's hard to stick a graphic warning on a person avoiding plans by pretending they've got family stuff on. But despite the literally thousands of news headlines, not everyone agrees America is facing a loneliness epidemic. That's because while there are lots of lonely people, it may not be getting worse over time, with evidence the numbers peaked during the COVID pandemic, but improved in the years since. One thing we can say for sure is Americans are spending a lot more time alone, more so today than at any time going back to 1965. And that's not just about the pandemic, with Americans spending even more time alone in 2023 than they did in 2021. The decline in socializing cuts across demographic groups. And over the past 20 years, the amount of time Americans spent attending or hosting a social event declined by 50%. That's very concerning, is what I would say if I wasn't so relieved to hear I'm not the only one not being invited to parties. There's evidence we're less happy alone than when we're with almost anyone else. The one exception being hanging out with people from work.
Hey.
Rude.
Sorry. It's science. A lot of people blame technology for our increasing isolation. But tech companies are also presenting themselves as the solution, with products like Friend, an AI chatbot-enabled necklace that listens in on your life and, according to at least one tech reporter, provides a running commentary that's snarky and unhelpful. If that sounds awful, their promotional video is unlikely to allay your concerns.
I kind of like to come up here to be by myself. I've never brought anybody else. I mean, besides her.
She goes everywhere with you, right?
Mm-hmm. I don't know about the Friend, but that was so awkward, I never want to interact with a human again. Some people are worried Americans aren't feeling lonely enough, arguing that while loneliness is a natural cue to spend time with other people, Americans are spending more time alone, while many measures of loneliness are flat or dropping. So regardless of whether America is in a loneliness epidemic or not, it's never a bad time to reach out to a... Yeah, not that one.
Safe to say, Jade, there is a lot going on this week. Once again, the clock is ticking down to a possible federal government shutdown in Washington, D.C. This one's a little bit different because usually the party in power is the one doing everything they can to keep the lights on and the doors open. But this time, the Trump administration maybe sees it as a way to sack government workers and end programs it doesn't like. So we'll see how it plays out. But then earlier today...
Big breaking news out of the Big Apple today. Eric Adams dropping out of the New York City mayoral race.
You might recall Eric Adams was elected mayor of New York as a Democrat in 2021, but the former police captain has been dogged by claims of bribery and corruption, including taking free flights, hotel upgrades, rorting campaign financing and taking illegal contributions from foreign nationals.
This has been a remarkable fall from grace, John. Adams ran as a centrist law and order candidate back then, and he once described himself as representing the future of the Democratic Party. But these scandals saw his polls collapse and he dropped out of the Democratic primary race this year to run as an independent before pulling the pin altogether.
Despite all we've achieved, I cannot continue my re-election campaign. The constant media speculation about my future and the Campaign Finance Board's decision to withhold millions of dollars have undermined my ability to raise the funds needed for a serious campaign.
And this controversy might not be over yet. The Trump administration abruptly ended the prosecution of Eric Adams earlier this year. And there's been a lot of speculation recently about whether he might be offered a job in the Trump administration in exchange for ending his campaign. Either way, Adams dropping out might help Trump's slightly favoured candidate, the former governor Andrew Cuomo, who's running as an independent against Democratic Socialist Zoran Mamdani.
Yes, this is a confusing race to say the least, with Trump supporting a former Democrat who he sparred with often, Andrew Cuomo. We'll see how this all plays out, because Eric Adams was only getting about 7% support in the latest opinion poll from Fox News just last week. Mamdani was 18 points in front of Andrew Cuomo. He is running as an independent after he lost that primary in a bit of an upset to Mamdani. The actual Republican in that field, Curtis Sliwa, is on just 11%. Comedian Jimmy Kimmel was back on the air last week after being suspended, of course, by America's ABC over comments about the alleged killer of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Kimmel's comeback after less than a week on the sidelines came after a wave of public, even political support, and was met with ratings 3 times higher than his average.
Our monologue from Tuesday night has more than 21 million views just on YouTube alone, and I want to say, we couldn't have done it without you, Mr. President. Thank you very much.
Maybe cynical to suggest, but those ratings might be the reason why ABC affiliates owned by regional players Sinclair and Nexstar, who were the ones who first took Kimmel off the air, followed ABC's lead by announcing at week's end they were also reinstating Jimmy Kimmel's show. So, perhaps a win for free speech, for now at least. We'll see if Trump's Federal Communications Commissioner Brendan Carr follows through on his earlier threats looking at remedies for broadcasters of Kimmel's show, although he's now claiming to have been misunderstood.
A lot of Democrats out there that are engaged in a campaign of projection and distortion. And distortion is they're completely misrepresenting the work of the FCC and what we've been doing.
Well, an awful lot of people must have misunderstood Brendan Carr, including prominent Republicans like Ted Cruz and conservative broadcasters like Ben Shapiro.
And speaking of misunderstandings, John, a lot of viewers upset at ABC America have been taking out their frustrations on our ABC Australia. Or maybe they think it actually is our fault. Take a look.
The following are real complaints received this week at ABC Australia. ABC America, we think these were meant for you.
All accents have been badly imitated to protect the innocent.
You're cancelling Kimmel because our big baby dictator president doesn't like comedians making fun of him? I have to cancel my trip to Disneyland next week. I'll never watch an ABC show again.
Grow a set of balls. Stand up for freedom of speech or lay down like the dogs you are.
You freaking cowards! Gonna quit watching all of your shows.
I am blocking your channel after I watch it. Only a football on late and want news.
You're pathetic. Cow-telling to the Christian national Nazi right? I cancelling Jimmy Kimmel.
Next time, try cow-telling the right organisation. A message from the ABC.
And that is it for another trip to Planet America. We will be back at the same time next week, 9:35 p.m. on ABC TV and anytime you like on ABC iView, YouTube and Facebook.
And there will be a weekend edition of Planet America on ABC News on Friday night.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.